I often meet people who'd like to be more involved in Twitter for business or pleasure, but they're unsure how to begin, or they quickly become discouraged because they're overwhelmed with the amount of information and they don't know how to filter it. In those instances, I find it useful to teach them the left column method. I'm going to demonstrate that for you now. The basic principle of the left column is that you place key listening triggers in the leftmost column of your Twitter app, then line up each one to the right in order of importance or need of response. For me, this is never static, and I change it dynamically depending on what I'm listening for or listening to at any given time. I ship various groups of people, hashtag searches, or reading lists, left and right as needed to make sure that I've got the content I want front and center. If participating in a Twitter chat session or a webinar, guess what? That column moves to the left position so I can pay attention to it immediately and respond to it without thinking too hard about it. So let me show you how that works. Right now we're looking at my normal TweetDeck dashboard in front of us. You'll see I actually have a column that I've called the left column. Now, how I use this is to select and filter certain people that I follow that I either talk to a lot, or they have very high volume content, or they may be a customer of mine or a client. So if you think of that, out of all the people you follow, who's the most important? You can create a column in most of the Twitter apps that is just this easy. In this case, I just edit the group and I select people to add to that column. And this is one that, as I follow more interesting people or new clients, I add them to this group, and I keep that going at all times, running at all times. My next column in this instance happens to be everyone else that I follow. So this is the rest of my Twitter stream. Okay, so for a brand, that usually means the general public or anyone else they follow. Keeping your mentions right up front of you is really important, and that's not an ego thing. The mentions are really important because that's where people are going to ask you questions or have a conversation with you or retweet you or make a comment on whatever your content is. And you want to be able to respond to that really quickly, especially if you are using it for business, because you want to make sure you're responding to any issues as quickly as you possibly can. It's also important to keep new followers up front and check them fairly regularly. If you've got a high volume Twitter account for business, it's not so necessary if you're just using it personally. Pardon me. There are multiple reasons you want to do that. The first reason is because you may want to check who the person is. You can click out and read the rest of their tweets. You can choose to follow them immediately, and then you can greet them, and it's usually a good idea to share a little bit of their content as well. If you've made the effort to follow them, they must be interesting in the first place. The second reason you want to check your new followers regularly is a little more unsavory. It's unfortunate, but there are people who create spam accounts in Twitter, and they're very easy to recognize because they're usually wearing bikinis with body parts hanging out, and they quite often have very inappropriate things in their profile. You know, you don't want people to look at your follower list and say, oh, you know, see that kind of thing. But it's also really important that you click block and report on them for Twitter, because it's getting obnoxious, and Twitter's losing a little bit of credibility because there are so many accounts like that. Don't let that dissuade you, though. I'm going to skip over favorites for now so we don't run out of time. I set up earlier today. I was in a Radiant 6 webinar today. So right now we're going to pretend that we are in the webinar right now. And you'll see what I'm doing is I'm just clicking the arrow to put my webinar hashtag over my left column, because that's the most important thing that I'm going to be paying attention to right now. So in this instance, I can monitor everything that all of the participants are sharing during the conference, but also I can keep track if anyone is asking me questions or making a comment during the webinar that might need a response or deserves my attention. After the end of the webinar, we just move it back over and we just revert to our normal instance the way it was before. And that's the end of this quick little demo.